Hope it helps. Does it align to the what was the expectation?
Yes, it does. Um, so, Kaushik, do you have any, like, of course, you've taught people who've taken certifications. Do you have any idea of what kind of exams they usually get? I mean, what
So
kind
I
of
am
questions
also,
they get in the
yeah,
exams?
yeah. So though I'm not a SPC, so basically in CGI, I'm taking care of Safe Agilist, SSM, that is the next level of CSM, that is Safe Certified Scrum Master, and
Okay.
POPM, that is the Product Owner and Product Management. That's all I'm taking care of in CGI as of now.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, the CSM questions will be very, I'll say, maybe it's very easy for me because I have 6+ of years of experience. I'll definitely share across some links where you can use some practice or mock tests. But once you register for that, they'll also give you the same your login. So before you write your final certification, you will have an sufficient amount of preparation also to be done.
Okay. All right. So, do you know if this is whatever you're showing me, the that is pretty much what comes in the exam as well, right?
No, no, Farhana, because I was not aware that this what my presentation is going to cover about is a Scrum and overview in Agile. So basically, this PPT was kept in mind, and very for the first time the whole Middle East Amex they wanted to move to Agile. So people were not used to Agile. So the examples and everything was kept in mind so that it's from a layman perspective also they can understand. So it's not planned because I was not aware that the need was more from a certification perspective or the various dashboards and workflow creation in Jira.
Okay. All right. But do you have material for that? Is that something that you can coach me on?
Definitely, but as far as the Jira is concerned, I have to have a glance at it because I have not personally logged in and created workflows or something. So same thing before sharing this PPT, I removed the things we had for MX, which was specific for them that I removed, and also let me see if in my current organization's login, I can make a different login into the Jira for practice session or something like I can show you. Otherwise, I can download few of the videos and share with you and walk you through those.
Okay.
Okay, so so basically we'll talk on what is agile, how what is it different from the traditional waterfall model, what are the artifacts and the ceremonies.
Okay.
So talking about agile, so I'll not say agile came exactly in 2001, but as the PPT says, the agile manifesto was brought about by a group of 17 like-minded individuals, like they were also software developers, and they went for a skiing in Utah, in a snowbird resort they managed. So while also they were enjoying with their friends, but while discussing, they came to know that all of them are facing a typical challenge, what was predominantly happening in the software industry. So that was the discussion prompted off, and they jotted down these four, which is called the Manifesto of Agile. So we'll talk about each of them. So if we talk about first one, individuals and interactions over process and tools. So it's not that in waterfall they were not being following those things, but in case of agile they felt like, so individuals and interaction. So these are basically two different words. So if we talk about the very first one, individuals. So in case of a typical waterfall for you'll find that people are given tasks and they are given a timeline. So typically a waterfall project in the workshops, the very junior most people are not involved. Their voices are not heard, but they are the developers. They are actually working on that. So they don't have any clue, right? So what the estimation was there, whether it's valid or not. So that interaction was missing in case of a typical waterfall. So here, that's the reason you will find individuals and interactions are given more importance over process and tools. Why process and tools will come across in the subsequent slides. The second thing it is emphasizing on working software rather than compressive documents. Even I, in my initial days when I have worked on waterfall projects, we have seen that almost the last 1 week it was kept only for documenting whether the client needs or not. It was simply dumped to them rather than focusing what the software we have developed, whether it is really what the client was expecting, whether it's going to meet the expectation of the client or not. So the documentation, it's not that again in agile we are not emphasizing anything on the documentation part. No documentation, it is there, but limited what is required for the minimum system. The third point, it talks about the customer collaboration over contract negotiation. So we involve the client in every stage. So if we talk about, if you are familiar with the scrum ceremonies, so if we talk about the demo part, sprint planning, so everywhere client is involved. In case of a typical waterfall, what was happening after the initial the workshop was happening and when the development was happening, there was no communication happening between the team and the customer. That is to lead to the scope creep. As a result of which, we have a definite picture. I'll just go over. This was happening. So the requirement was something else, and the delivery else was happening something else.
Okay.
And the last thing, what I'll say the most about agile is in case of a typical waterfall. So whatever was part of the SOW, the scope of work, anything which was not there in the SOW is to come as a change request. So if I talk about one of the search functionalities, any of the things that client have not thought about that my competitor has, and I have overlooked it completely, and the project is already in progress. And tomorrow, if I don't include this, and by the time I'm going to complete my current project, it is going to come as a change request. It is not going to deliver any value to me. So as a result of which, the business value was lost. The customers used to face a lot of financial issues. So these are the things which prompted and Agile is addressing, which Waterfall had a drawback. Any question on this, Farah?
No, no questions.
You will have a few questions in the exams related to that. Basically, Agile has these four manifestos and 12 principles.
Okay. For manifesto. Okay.
The second thing is what is about. Agile is nothing, what I was just talking in the previous slide. So what my initial the project I started off. So that scope has changed, or any of the things unknowns that we have discovered. Okay, so that is what Agile is saying about is hitting a moving target. In case of a typical waterfall, what was happening? The target was fixed, and anything which was not there, any scope change that was coming as a change request, and as a result of which it was not adding any value to the client.
Hmm. Okay.
So this is what Agile is. There are some miscommunication. That's the reason I have deliberately put this slide. So people
Okay.
think like, in case it's not organized, so since it is welcoming change, so it is not organized. Anything, no, it's not like that. So in the subsequent slides, we'll have like we have the product backlog, which keeps on refining. So why it is again, I will not say structured because we have certain rules, we have few ceremonies, and it goes by that. And why it is not unplanned? Because I'll say that the scope I can accommodate a change, but the sprint timelines, the deadlines, the release, everything is planned. The next two points which I was already highlighting, people say that there's no documented. That is a very wrong misconception. Okay, so there is a documentation deliberately required in Agile, but that is a minimum. It's not that I am going to dedicate it entire a month or a week only to do the documentation. So this takes in parallel when the work is getting in progress. So definitely we have not kept aside any week or a day to just to work on documentation. The last is not discipline part. Rather, it is very disciplined because that's the reason it is getting so much popular these days. And not only the software industry will find Agile being followed everywhere. Rather, I'll say software industry has borrowed this. If we talk about Scrum, it has come from rugby. If we talk about Lean, and if we talk about Kanban, so it goes back to Toyota, and it came from car manufacturing industry. So
Okay.
this was what I was just talking about. So in a lot of projects, I'll say, uh, starting from if I talk about my days of Shell, oil major, if I talk about banks, I have worked for Lloyd Banks, ANZ Bank, and Kuwait Finance House in the Middle East. Also, I have done this work for MX. For them also, I've seen a lot of requirement. So, so there was a gap between the requirement and the delivery. So if you see this figure, they have two wheels in the bicycle also, but we also have two wheels in the bike. But how the requirement was explained and how this was interpreted, it was different. As a result of which the delivery has faltered. And now instead of the bicycle, the delivery team is offering a motorbike. Definitely, it's a good looking, but it doesn't add any value to the client. And moreover, the cost has gone up. And this used to lead to the frequent fight between the development or the project team as well as the customer. And that brought about Agile. So this is the comparison you'll find in case of a typical waterfall and Agile. How is it? I'll quickly run through it. So initially there used to be the requirement gathering session. Once the requirement gathering session was done, they used to start with the design phase. So once the design was over, so we used to go to the development. And once the development was happening, so far I will, since you are from the QA background, you'll be able to understand. So they used to do the various kind of testing over here. So
Yeah.
until unless they're reaching this last stage, they were not involved. in the various stages, and you'll find that as the arrow goes, anything which needs a back, so it has to again start from the requirement. They'll validate the requirement. Again, the design is going to happen. The development is going to happen, and finally they are going to come to the QA. Until this phase, customers were never involved. So how is it different in case of Agile? You'll find, see, all the four stages are there. So if I talk about the whole project, so in this particular figure, one, two, three, four, five, six, they're split it into six sprints, or you can say six releases in which they are going to deliver the project. So if I take the worst case, the very first sprint went for a toss. Okay. So what was the requirement and what the delivery has happened? So in this case, in case of a typical agile, the most complex thing is taken at first, not the at the last. So in this case, it will be the wheels. So if that has gone wrong in the very first sprint, so we have enough five to take care of. And definitely when you are developing it at the end of every day and hour, so you are not waiting for the last day of the demo. So we are involving the customer in that, so they can give a live feel and say, no, this was not my expectation. You know what I was looking like. So you incorporate those feedbacks, and definitely you have a scope to improve, and the whole project doesn't go for a toss. Any questions on this?
No, no.
So the next is the whole, in case of a scrum project, this is the entire life cycle, how it happens. So initially, if you talk about the required gathering, so it's an ongoing process. If you'll see, like, it is coming and getting dropped. So in case of a typical, if we talk waterfall, we used to have the Microsoft project plan, right? So once the project has started, we used to break down into work breakdown structure, and the work is to happen. But in case of agile, so this requirement gathering is not a one-time process. So definitely those requirements are coming, and we are maintaining them in a place called, which is known as product backlog. And this product backlog refinement happens throughout the project life cycle. Anything like if we talk about that doesn't have any value, that will go out. Anything new which is they have identified, they can add it. Suppose from this, initially I made a ranking. So there are 100 requirements, and the very first 10 I'm working on, that we have decided is the most important. We have started off. Then we realize that 30 to 40, those requirement doesn't hold good. It is going out. Rather 20 more requirement has come in, and we again do the ranking. And from the product backlog, so basically we take out a few items basis of the ranking, and we have a pre-sprint story review. So when you say about like refinement of those things, if any information is missing, and since we are talking about Jira Fara, so those will be in the backlog. And there is a concept in Jira, so whether those user stories are in a defined stage, whether the definition of ready, the definition of done, those conditions has been reached out not. Whether team has any open has questions, those has been addressed or not. Until and unless those stage has reached, so those stories will not be pulled into the sprint backlog. That means still those are not refined. And in the sprint planning session, definitely each and every user stories. I hope you're familiar with an user stories and everything, right?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So so basically in the sprint planning, so they ensure those are not at an epic level. Okay. So even if it is at an epic level, so in the pre-sprint review, they split it into user stories and they work on the sprint backlog. And in the sprint planning meeting for the upcoming sprint, they know what is the team's capacity, how much story points to be loaded, and it depends on clients to client whether they are going to use t-shirt sizing, Fibonacci series, flying poker, how they are going to do it. And once the sprint backlog is committed, so team was started going to work on the sprint. So Agile says a sprint duration can be 1 to 4 weeks, but my see as of now I have not seen any team working on 1 week sprint. The reason is 1 week is too long. In that also you have to do the planning, you have to do the retro and the testing. At the same time, 4 weeks is too long because again in current CGO we have few teams who are having a sprint duration of 4 weeks, which is almost a month. But because those user stories are interdependent on various other line of business, and we cannot split them into smaller user stories. That's the reason. But typically, if we talk about maximum projects, they run on a sprint duration of 2 to 3 weeks. And once every day, actually, there's going to be a daily stand-up meeting. Team is going to come and say what they are working on, if there is any roadblocks, what they have achieved from yesterday, and what is the plan from today. And if there is any roadblock, they highlight it to the Scrum Master to get help in that. So like this, typically for a 10 days, on the 10th day, we are going to have a demo and retro. Subsequently, after a few sprints, it's the management decides when they are going to go for a release. And it is a MVP when it is reached, that is the potential shippable increment, they go for a release. So coming to roles, you will find this blue circle. In that, you will find product owner, scrum master, and the scrum team. And outside the circle, we have the stakeholder and the business owners. Definitely, who was giving us the business and the vision, everything. And a typically a scrum team doesn't have like a typical waterfall. We have this BA, technical lead. So those kind of fancy designations are not present. So we say a scrum team. So which also have a business analyst, developers, testers, everyone. If you have DevOps also, so DevOps guys